of the trees regarding our gender identity and sexuality. When there's no place like home, empty air, an empty establishment. Friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights, out on the cruel streets tonight.
I'm joined down here at the basement of the Outhouse with Frances Fay, who is the curator and organiser of what I would call a heritage exhibition of LGBTQ plus culture. Frances, welcome to LGBTQ plus life.
Right. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Frances, just looking around, can you just share with the listeners what was the impetus for creating this exhibition, and what do you hope people will get from it?
The impetus, I guess, happened some years back. Maybe it was just a seed of an idea, maybe about 5-6 years ago, when I guess Dublin has changed, the queer scene has changed. We've won a lot of freedoms for the community, and that's brilliant. But I personally thought maybe now is a good time to pause and kind of look back and just think about how we won those freedoms and the people that won those freedoms for us, and not necessarily even from pure politics, but just to remember the fact that a lot of those people, especially in the 70s and 80s, which this exhibition deals with, were young people, and just to be gay, just to be out, just to go clubbing was in itself a political statement, you know, because everything and everybody was telling you you can't do that. So yeah, I thought about the people like myself of a certain generation who maybe felt somewhat invisible because, well, a lot of people, I guess, aren't here, you know, their voice isn't representative, so I wanted to kind of represent their voice.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've described the period you're talking about, which would probably be, it would start about the early 80s and ran at least into the mid-90s as well. I've described it in some respects as the LGBTQ plus Holocaust. We lost almost an entire generation and some of our most creative souls as well. How do you feel looking back at that, Frances?
Yeah, it's hard to put it into words. You know, it was pretty bleak. Ireland was pretty bleak. I mean, it was basically a church state. It was very conservative. You know, we had a big recession. We had immigration, and then HIV/AIDS came along. And to be a young person at that time, of course, all you want to do is be young. Go out with your friends and enjoy yourself, but this is all a backdrop to people getting ill. And back in those early days, before there were treatments, people would get ill and very quickly go downhill, and yeah, it's just disappear. Like there was lots of phrases like, "Oh, they're gone to London," and that could be code for meaning that the person had passed, or yeah, so I mean, if you can imagine today, I said this to a young person the other day, like in your circle of friends, if you can imagine like maybe a third of your friends just disappearing within 6 months, you know, it's a lot to deal with, but I think we didn't have the tools then to deal with. A lot of people just got on with life and kind of parked that in the back of their head, so yeah.
Now, I interviewed Dr. Patrick McDonough a couple of months ago, and he's written he wrote his PhD thesis on it, and he was very much of the view that the freedoms and the respect that people enjoy now, it's largely due to activists. It wasn't because there was this great enlightenment amongst the Irish people. People like yourself, people like Tony Walsh, people like David Norris, a whole range of people enlightened the people, they educated the people. Is that your recollection of that period, Francis?
Well, I'm going to put my hand up and say I wasn't an activist, you know, not in the way someone like Tony Walsh was, but I was an activist in a way, you know, at the time I was a young person crazy about music. I was big into the new romantic, that's what they called it, gender bending, all these phrases that we use. So I was experimenting with makeup, different looks, and I was walking down the street looking like the way I did, you know, and that in itself was a kind of activism.
It was an activism. That was a very courageous act to engage in, particularly in a society like Ireland.
Yeah. You know, so and yeah, to me it was like actual kind of being politically aware, and that came kind of later on. I was busy being a young person.
Indeed.
You know. But I did want to be a young person on my terms, you know. I loved the scene, the music, electronic music was just coming in, you know, and then we had that all those wonderful people, like Soft Cell, Dead or Alive, later on Duran Duran, Culture Club, you know, playing with gender and our looks, and I thought that was inspirational for me at the time, because Dublin was very much like a rock town.
Just to put it in context, Francis, when I was living in London at that particular time you're talking about, my cousin had a friend called Gary, and we bet Gary was outrageous. We said, you know, I bet you wouldn't walk down the main street in Finsbury Park in a dress. Gary, of course, would do anything. So he did, he walked, it was about a kilometre, and he was being spat at. So I just wonder, what response were you getting from your fellow citizens when you were, shall we say, an in-your-face look? Well, you know, I'm not a fool. Like, I took precautions. Like, there were kind of unsaid rules. Like, you know, if you got a bus into town and you were wearing makeup and you had your hair, you know, sprayed up, you didn't go upstairs on the bus, and you didn't sit down on the back of the bus. You know, you kept downstairs. Usually, you didn't get the last bus into town. You got the one before that, because the last bus was a bit hairy. You know, and you took the quiet streets rather than, instead of O'Connell Street, you'd go down, you know, maybe Moore Street. You know, you went down the quiet streets to avoid people, to get to your destination of somewhere like the Hirschfeld Centre, Flikkers. So we did take precautions, but I was lucky. I had a little group of friends who were doing the same thing. I was coming from North Side, from Finglas. And you know, the thing about Finglas, you know, we can all stereotype places, but back then there was an awful lot of tribes in Finglas. There were punks, there were goths, there was a lot of bands, there was a lot of creative people, and so you did have that. But yeah, I mean, of course you came across aggression and abuse, and you kind of just put your best face on. And Can I ask you then, on a personal level, Francis, how did your family respond to this, and how did your neighbours and even people you went to school with, were they welcoming, were they accepting? Or were they somewhat confused and felt threatened?
My family were fine. I think it was because I was the second last of six, and by the time I came along, I think my mother had seen everything, you know, well, or nearly, you know, because you know, I'd had brothers that were into ska, T-Rex, glam rock, Bowie, you know, so she'd seen all her other children kind of go through phases, should we say. Some phases we don't grow out of, but so my family were tolerant. They didn't quite know exactly why I was doing or what I was doing, but They were fine. The neighbours and I mean, I did get name calling and stuff, you know, going for the bus,
Were you out in school, or did you leave that?
The funny thing is, like in school, as far back as I can remember, and that's going back to primary, I mean, I was always called names, you know, so, you know, whether that be, you know, back in the day it was like pansy, puff, you know, and then as you got to secondary, the language got more derogatory, and, you know, so again, you know, when you're young, you kind of, I think Panty calls about this, talked about this, where you check yourself, you know, and you go, what am I giving away? What makes me, you know, what signals and signs, you know? So yeah, you check the way you're walking, the way you speak, and I think I did that as a young person. Then I got to a stage during the 80s when I really wanted to express myself, and I thought I don't give a crap, you know. So if I'm going to experience that kind of name calling and abuse, then I'm going to give them something to, you know, some ammunition. Yeah.
Francis, you've recreated to a certain degree what Flikkers was like for a lot of people. How important was it to have a venue like that where people could go along, socialise and just be themselves?
I really can't underestimate the importance of a space like that at that time. Because, you know, your Monday to Friday, you were somebody else. You had to be to your family, to your friends, to your workers, teachers. You know, there was an awful lot of judgment around. So, and people, if it got out that you were gay, people would, you know, possibly be disowned by their families, lose their jobs. So going to Flikkers was like one night we could literally let your hair down, and just everybody felt that. I think that's what made it kind of special, is that you were there with a couple of hundred people who were all releasing this pent up energy, you know. So they really were going for,
You'll have to forgive my ignorance because I wasn't living in Dublin then, Francis. Was Flikkers always in the Hirschfeld, or was Flikkers?
Yeah, Flikkers was always in the Hirschfeld. It was.
And was it a venue? I know that everybody who I speak to about it, it was very dynamic, and it was, you know, high energy, which is not uncommon for a lot of LGBT entertainment venues. Was it a venue that had women and men mixing, or was it women's nights and men's nights, or did you have a night where everybody mucked in together, to use a phrase?
Well, you know, it was predominantly a male space. There was a women's night only, so it wasn't as welcoming or as mixed. You know, we can be very, you know, what's the word?
Compartmentalised.
Yeah, it was very compartmentalised, but I was thinking about this. What you have to remember, it actually, even though it was a queer space, it did mirror its surroundings and the bigger culture, which, I mean, we still had pubs with snugs and women only, you know, and women weren't allowed to drink pints, or they were discouraged from drinking pints. They drank half pints, and if a woman asked for a pint glass, she would be looked down on. So that was just normal every day outside of Flikkers. So in one way, people were bringing in their prejudices that were out there in wider society, you know.
Well, most of the women I've spoken to around that, talking about that period, say women went to JJ Smith's. Is that your recollection as well?
It is. But I mean, I went to Flikkers and I had a lot of women friends who came with me, and we had our own little crowd. I mean, it was very diverse in one way as regards to age groups, and kind of it ran the gamut of social strata. We had, like, there was solicitors and barristers, there was rent boys, there was working class, middle class. You know, there was all these people under one roof that not necessarily had anything in common other than their sexual preferences. You know, but it made for a very interesting dynamic. You know.
Yeah. Just looking around here, Francis, you've got some fabulous photographs, you've got some costumes.
Yeah.
I particularly like the, if you like, the hanky code that you've got down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Do you think people now have a better appreciation and a better understanding of what LGBTQ culture is?
That's a good question. I think when I was going to Flikkers, an awful lot of things were coded, like which earring, you know, you put which ear you put your earring in, you know, certain badges, certain groups. There were signs that you took with you through your day-to-days. There were signs for other people to let those people who were in the know. But a lot of those signs and symbols have been consumed by mass media and by society now, and they're no longer exclusively LGBTQ. And yeah, I mean, I suppose that's good in one way, but you know, I am kind of a little bit what's the word, torn about it, because there's lots of talk about cultural appropriation, and I think society has appropriated a lot of LGBT plus signs and symbols, and we should bring it back. We should remember that and remember their origins, you know, and the ownership of them. Yeah.
Just in conclusion, Francis, it's a fabulous exhibition. I want to recommend anybody, whether you were there, whether you're LGBT, whether you're not, just to come down to the basement in the Outhouse to see it. How long is it running until, and how can people see it? Perhaps even just during their lunch break.
So Fabulous Flikkers, the exhibition is running from till the Saturday the 29th here in Outhouse, 105 Capel Street. It's down in the basement, or some people know it as the theatre space. It's open from 12 midday till 5 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and obviously entry is free. There's the cafe in Outhouse as well, so if you want to come along, have a coffee and then come and see the exhibition, please do. And can I just thank, there's a couple of people I want to thank.
Of course, please do.
So there's Age and Opportunity and Bealtaine Festival, and of course Outhouse that I have to thank, and the Arts Council and Dublin City Council. It's great that they're funding and supporting this project, you know. So.
And just as a final note, Francis, I would put it to you, if anybody perhaps has some memorabilia out there that they might have stashed away or whatever, and they didn't, you know, that's personal, you'd probably love to see some of that, would you not?
I would love. I mean, this is a very organic exhibition, so people can come along and they can give photocopies of heirlooms they might have, or memorabilia they have, records or clothes, and we will show them during the rest of the exhibition, and we'll document them as well. And yeah, that would be great. So I'd ask people to look into your attics and look into your wardrobes and your boxes.
Yeah. Francis, it's been a delight talking to you. You're a survivor, and let's hope you'll be around with us for a very long time to come. So take care.
Thank you very much.
Friends of Dorothy, come out off the sidewalk and onto the street, to the sound of those legendary feet. When there's no place like home, establishment, with the chaff and the short straw, they'll have a stuff for sure. Anti-M, I'm anti-establishment. They took my name and the clothes I own. They broke our hearts, but not our souls. flag home.